Hey, this is my video summary and basically presentation of my written summary, which is a bullet summary of the book Competing in the Age of AI, Strategy and Leadership When Algorithms and Networks Run the World, from two Harvard Business School professors, Karim Lakhani and Marco Iansiti. And was a really great book, and this is why I would like to just summarize and share this with you guys. So, and also in the second part of the video, I will briefly touch on which tool I'm using here. So that's called RemNote.io, and how I constructed this this summary with the portals you see here. And yeah, let's get started. So at the start of the book, they briefly discussed the history of the firm, which is also really nicely described in from Noah Harari, History of Humankind, I think it's the name. And it started with the Dutch East Indian Company, founded in 1602. And the next inflection point was basically the inflection point of mass production, where the icon of this kind of inflection point can be seen as the Model T Ford production line, which was introduced in 1908. And now we are in this phase of, or shifting into this new era of the AI-powered firm. And here they also describe the architecture of those firms. And traditionally, firms scale sublinear, and this is also greatly described in the book Scale. When we go here, just to show you guys, it's called Scale: The Universal Laws of Life, Death, and Organisms, Cities, and Companies. And basically means when you have like a linear scale, it's sub, so below linear. But information technology firms scale superlinear, especially AI-powered firms. And this is because digital agents, compared to humans, have some missing needs. And the missing needs of complexity reduction, of scale, or scale limitation by autonomy and isolation. So being like, isolated element of this complex whole, and limiting the variety of interactions. So meaning like an office worker or knowledge worker has some skill set and has some people he interacts with, or maybe also systems, computer software he interacts with, but this will always be limited by his brain size and his skill set, where an AI or an autonomous digital agent does not have this limitation, and can basically also does not need the automation. It can isolation. It can be connected to any other node of the whole network if the computational power allows for that. And this can also dramatically increase the range of possibilities. And just to touch on that, this is kind of a new field, I would say, to draw the connection here of this new field, social computing, which is pretty interesting, where it describes the interaction of human cognition and machine cognition in like a networked world. But not to move away from this summary, let's continue here. So, and then the AI-powered firm architecture is also very has a high modularity and reuse of software and algorithms, which is also really nicely described in the book about Amazon. I'm not exactly sure which one, but where they always try to have the departments or the product elements create their own API for the other departments and so on. And lastly, they predict or see the pattern that competitive advantage will move to from software to data, which we will also touch on later, which is this phenomenon of learning effects, where traditionally or previously firms kind of built their mode or their value creation around proprietary software, so in-house developed software, and this will transition into firms collaboratively developing open source software and using proprietary data to create value, to create a comparative advantage. And this shared infrastructure will then be developed. There's also a great book by Nadia Ekbal about this recently, which came out with Stride Press, which is really good, I think. But let's move on here. So they then also describe of this architecture the different value capture dynamics, where compared to the traditional digital business model, the process can be separated much more. So, for example, Google has the products which are free to use, and then they can separately sell the data, analyze the data, and can separate those processes. And then we also look at the example of Netflix as a company with an AI powered firm architecture, where Netflix, for example, and I found this interesting, also tests the thumbnails of the videos, and the general goal or the kind of problem they are facing is this explore-exploit trade-off of exploring the complex human being's preferences while exploiting his time investment, his money basically, or their money to extract that in the form of subscriptions or maybe even additional purchases. And there's also this AI powered film model is also very strong on experimentation, where, for example, Netflix, they have their whole experimentation platform, and where they do thousands of tests at any point in time to improve the product, and we can also see that those kind of structures of the firm are enforced or influenced by the actual software that the company or the teams in the company uses. So, for example, when they found that companies which use enterprise software which was built around this old paradigm, this old operational model, mostly designed around functional teams, then it also had an influence on the transition of the firms into the new paradigm and the firm structure. So now there are a few interesting points about networks and marketplaces, and lastly some more abstract elements I want to touch on, and looking at again rewinding what are network effects. For business to exhibit strong network effects, the value derived must continually increase sharply as the size of the network expands. And then they described 3 different value capture dynamics. So as we know, basically the economy is about creating and capturing value, and therein they are also regarding networks a few additional dynamics that play into this game or this system, I would say. So there's multi-homing, which is a negative dynamic where people use different products and capture value from different platforms. And then there's disintermediation, where people jump out of the platform after they found someone and build a business relationship with, so the value is not captured by the actual marketplace or platform. And then there's a positive positive dynamic, which is very powerful, which is network bridging, where previously separated networks are connected to create synergies and to create value, basically. And for example, Google is doing this by bridging the ads network and the search, the people that are searching, the network of those people. And Alibaba is doing this by connecting or bridging e-commerce platforms or an e-commerce platform with financial services. And then they describe weak network effects markets are easier to capture, and like strong network effects markets are harder to capture. And this is because it is easier to start a business that has weak network effects. So because strong network effects take some threshold of all the parties being aligned and basically having demand and supply meeting each other. And for example, they also compare Uber's different opportunities, value capture opportunities, and how their business model, their businesses compare in this comparison. And they highlight, or they compare the bridging potential in the y-axis and the sustained profitability potential, so the basically sustained value capturing potential and the x-axis. And we see that, for example, Uber Cargo, which is bridging connecting the driver networks, in this case not to generally other networks, but in this case to the cargo network of cargo suppliers and demand. And this is why this has a high bridging potential, where other products have less of this potential. So we're coming to the last part, and also one of the most exciting parts of this summary, which is about learning effects. And learning effects is this analogical concept to network effects, where in network effects we talk about the nodes in a network and how they their connections create this effect. And in learning effects we talk about data points, which where there's a similar preferential attachment mechanism. And the learning effects are in general about capturing the value added by increasing the amount of data flowing through the same networks. And so you can imagine companies like Netflix or Amazon have a strong focus on these kind of information flows and how they add to the overall learning effects. And there's also the phenomenon of the square root law, which holds that the algorithm's accuracy increases per data point as a square root. And so the accuracy rises with the square root and then drops off as the algorithm is fully trained and comes to its maximum capacities. This is related to the learning effects. And lastly, the company architecture and business model. And lastly, they mention that for this new company architecture and business model, there are some new shifts going on with the industry boundaries. So the vertical specialization, from the Industrial Revolution, is going away as the widespread digitalization drives ubiquitous cross-industry connections, which means that the previous verticalization was really focused on having one strong business in one vertical, where now we have a strong horizontal connections between two other verticals. And now, as our digitalization allows these connections, which we discussed at the very start, of these digital and human agents being very closely interconnected and collaboratively working together, we will see more of these cross-boundary connections. And one example they make here is that Google is going into an industry, Alibaba is launching banks, and we see also generally that the data of one industry can be used in other industries. And lastly, they also mention friction, the impact of friction, but this is more of an abstract point where they mention that there is some downside of removing friction. We saw, for example, with some church shooting videos that went viral on Facebook because there was less friction of sharing those videos. And generally, from an engineering standpoint, frictionless systems are prone to instability and have difficulty finding equilibrium, which I found very profound point at the end of this summary. And yeah, lastly, I wanted to show you the tool I'm using. If you are a subscriber to RemNote and seeing this video, you will know it. But for those other people, this is RemNote, your thinking and learning workspace. And it mostly, or its current, most strong parts are the nonlinear note-taking, or also called like connected note-taking, where you saw I linked to many other documents in my knowledge base, and then this smart flashcard integration, which is very great for students and generally everybody that likes to grow his knowledge, internalize knowledge to gain mastery. And yeah, just scrolling a bit over our landing page so you know what I'm using here. And then I just wanted to touch on how I did the summary. So the first step for me here was to just write down my notes and my highlights, collect them here. In the second part I added links to other like related topics. For example, these points are actually not from the book. I added them afterwards as connections came to mind. The last step for me was to move the actual notes or the pieces of knowledge that I kind of wanted to bring into a broader context, into basically embed in my actual knowledge base away from these notes, and then just move them. And there's the shortcut Command M. Just move them to another place in my knowledge base, and also thereby created this portal. So you can imagine it as in the game Portal, where this is just like a window to this other node. But this allows me, so I always know that those nodes are actually from this book, which helps me to track sources and so on. Lastly, thank you so much for watching, and thanks to the authors for writing this book, Competing in the Age of AI. I can highly recommend it. And also, if you're interested in more in RemNote, definitely check out remnode.io to learn more about this tool. Bye.